My name is AnnMarie Bains, and I'm the founder and executive director of the Practice Space. And it's hard to believe that it's been 5 years since we just opened the doors and we were trying to figure out what this was going to look like. And I just remember that first couple of moments when people were going to start arriving, just like you were here today, and we had no idea what was going to happen. We didn't know if people were going to like this thing that we made. We didn't know if anyone was going to even show up that day. And as everyone here knows, starting something new and putting yourself out there is a really scary thing. Because it's taking a risk. It's also being bold. It's not playing it safe. And it's really just doing what you love. So one of the things that I always hear over and over again, and I'm sure you all have as well, is that if if something is uncomfortable, then you're doing a good thing. Or, oh yeah, growth is uncomfortable, and everyone says all these things, and then you're kind of nodding, and you're like, yeah, I don't know if discomfort feels very good. And everyone here knows that feeling because all of you are people who've put yourselves out there and you've done things to take a risk, to have a voice, to work hard, to practice, and that's really what we're all about here today. So everyone here knows what it feels like to maybe not have a voice and to feel silent, but again, those tiptoe and little baby steps that you take to be able to put yourself out there are really important. Really, we couldn't have done this without you. Just the loyalty, the support, the community has been so important through all of this journey. But one thing that's really exciting is that we had been around for about 2.5 years, so halfway through our lifespan when the pandemic hit, and now we've doubled our participants. So we've helped 1,600 total participants in the last 5 years. And you all helped make that happen. So one of the things that I like to think about when I think about discomfort is that when things are uncomfortable, it is just a sign that you can't be alone. So you have to find people to help you through that discomfort. And all of you have been in that role for us. So I just wanted to start off first by talking a little bit about the early days. So I'll talk a little bit about that history and where we've come from, where we are now. And those early years in 2017 were really scary. Just being able to first figure out what this was going to be. I have all these notebooks sketching out all these different ideas. And then, where's Ryan? Ryan! So we were at a speech and debate competition because Ryan is one of my former students. And he just made this comment about how all the years that he spent coming to my house in my living room practicing speech and debate, because that's what the Practice Space started off as, what was more important about that was having a space to practice. So it wasn't even like the competitions, the tournaments, the doing really well. I mean, he did really well. He went to Tournament of Champions, and that's where we were having this conversation. But through it all, he was saying, it's the space to practice. And I remember taking my little Holiday Inn notepad, and I was like, space to practice, question mark? Then I flipped it. So in those early years when we were trying to figure out the space, finding the office, just even figuring out where the money was going to come from, saving each of my paychecks from my last job to be able to open this up in the first place, and then also just being able to take the leap and leave my job to be able to start the Practice Space was also really scary. So fast forward a little bit, we had a lot of other adventures along the way. Our first board meeting was in our basement. We couldn't quite fit, and we were just kind of there. And luckily, we got an office a couple of months later. And during all of that, we were starting the website. We started the logo. And they aren't here today, but I just want to give a shout out to Sarah Waters Design, a little grandparents couple that made our logo and our website and helped us reach more people because they really understood us. I remember on the phone just talking to Sarah, and I was like, we want to be able to build and practice and feel safe doing that. So she's like, okay, so maybe outline, then a sketch, and then solid? Yay. I'm not a very visual person, so it's good to be surrounded by people like that. In addition to that, the El Cerrito High School speech and debate team, which is where I started as a speaker, feeling really nervous and unsure. I grew up in West Contra Costa Unified, for those who don't know, and this community is the one that, this is where I want to be forever and ever, and this is the community I want to give back to. And El Cerrito High, they were the ones at that first open house. They were the ones that showed up, who were there, who are my family, my community. And then there was the uncertainty about being able to figure out how to work with our first students and just know what our coaching looked like. I had been coaching El Cerrito speech and debate for since 2001, so 22 years ago, and still am, and just trying to figure out what that coaching approach was going to look like. Was this going to work with people who didn't necessarily want to compete? How could we push back against some of those typical ways that public speaking is always kind of fitting people into a certain mold? Our coaches, and now we've progressed so that our high school students are now coaching our elementary school students, and it's just, that feels so much a part of the practice space. All of you are here because you care so much about the mission to be able to build confidence and build community through communication skill development. And we all care about elevating underrepresented voices because we know what it feels like to be silenced. And we do it in this fun, quirky, silly way, but it's a very serious mission. And all of you are such an important part of that. Our board keeps us on the path to growth. They help us reach more people. They help support us, and they're also my very important thought partners. So with all of this work, we were just getting into a rhythm, and then lockdown started. We had just finished our curriculum, and I was so excited to put it out there. We were going to have a party. I was like, yay, finally! And I had basically been in lockdown from January through February trying to finish the curriculum, and I was like, finally, I'm free! Oh no. We all remember what that was like. So luckily we had some really key team members along the way who helped us. So we were able to switch to doing online programs, and many of you have been a part of those online programs. Some of you, I had no idea how long it was going to be, and I had never taught online before. So that first camp that Ashton was in, you'll hear him later, that first camp was the first time I had taught online. And it was just really that moment of, okay, well, here we are, we're putting ourselves out there again. We're gonna take some risks, this is what it's going to look like, and we're just going to dive in. And I'm so happy that people kept coming back and they kept being part of the journey, because we were like, well, okay, people have to talk. And they have a lot more to talk about now and so many stories to tell. So what we saw during the pandemic not only was increased growth, but then we also saw people telling stories about how they needed to heal. We heard people tell stories about sexual violence, about violence against Asian Americans. We heard people tell stories about racism. We heard people do debates about climate change and all of the concerns there as well. And students did online debate tournaments for many, many years, as we know. And they just kept on putting their voice out there. And it meant more and more because of what was happening in our world. And so I'm just so happy that that work has continued and that you've all been such an important piece of that. So, fast forward now, instead of feeling afraid, I don't. I feel like I have a lot of friends and a huge community that makes this work happen. So really, again, this is not work that we do alone. This is work that we do together, and really couldn't have done it without all of you. And it means